Continue from where I left off 2 tapes ago about when I was sharing about the Song of Moses, the witness for the children of Israel, especially for the latter days, to be wise to consider this in that day. What's more important when regarding the law of Moses' time? When the people kept I'll go back before then. The children of Israel was in Egypt 430 years, so we believe. Now, in bondage under Pharaoh, they were treated as the second-class servant in the end. But it took a while to get to that. It started off good, and then all the descendants, they multiplied in Egypt. And for 430 years, that would have meant a child being born would have had his dad, his grandparents, his great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, right the way back as far as he could take notes of, in the slavery. Have you considered that? How to exist as a nation, as some other the people of the land's gophers. I mean, that's quite a thought. The slave mentality in the mind to be servant of others. It's actually quite a horrible, scary thought, isn't it? And at a certain time, before the end, even the Pharaoh deciding to slaughter all the babies, to try and, like as if they were cattle, trying to cull them or something, But it was something that the Lord took vengeance on and rewarded them back when he slaughtered the firstborn of Egypt. The time of the Passover, the lamb's blood on the doors, and destroying spirit. That was like a repayment of something that Pharaoh had done, but it was like a generation or two before. It was done to God's people, His covenant people. And as many people say, oh, it was unfair that God did that, blah blah blah. Oh, shut up, we don't know all the secrets and things. God's a merciful, kind God and a just God, and a God of judgment. And whatever people say, whatever they sound like, whinging, murmuring against God, goodness sake, He's made us. I mean, He can cause us to fall, to lift us up, or anything. He can do what he pleases. This is like, even if you don't know anything about God or you don't believe in Him, it's crazy and it's not common sense to put down something that you don't know about, And likewise, also believe with people that call themselves believers, or even Israel, things they don't know of. It's better to just shut up, be silent, rather than speak ugly about something you don't know anything about. Speaking evil of dignities that you don't know. Even Michael the archangel, when he was contending over the body of Moses with the devil, he didn't bring about any railing accusations against Satan. All he said was, "The Lord rebuked thee," and that was enough. And we don't know much about that situation, that story about the body of Moses. Maybe there's more writings in Jewish archives and stuff, but I don't know much about it. But it makes sense to be under God, to fear Him like as God. Goodness, it's like he can squash His flag if He wants to. I mean, it's crazy talking about your Creator badly. It's common sense in any language. Even the heathen, they have a certain respect, but a lot of that goes to things that aren't God. But anyway, that's besides the point. Getting back, every time when the children of Israel were brought out of Egypt by the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, when he rescued them out, he took them out of Egypt, out of bondage to Pharaoh, with mighty signs and wonders, and all those mighty miracles that he done. It still wasn't enough to change the hearts of the people. They were still with that bondage slavery mentality, and one or two passed the test and got the message, Caleb and Joshua, but the rest, they perished and they didn't enter the promised land because of that hardness of their hearts. And these things happen for our learning. Some people may imagine if they see some great sign of God, that'll convince them, and they'll change their ways and they'll become a believer or whatever. They'll fear God and do the commandments, etc. But it wasn't enough for the children of Israel then. What makes people assume it will be now? There's a much greater conviction to believe God when it's a personal thing, and it might not be a great marvellous way. I'll give a little short testimony here of many years ago with me. One time I used to get a bit bored and I used to go in the bookies and I'd do bets. Sometimes when I got too bored, I'd go in there quite regular, and it wasn't a good habit. It was a bad thing really. But my eyes were fixed because a few times that I'd won a lot of money, and it's almost like an ignorant beast goes back to try and do the same again, hoping you'd do the same again, you see. And there was one particular time I was set free from that kind of lazy sort of mentality, the imagination mentality of that. When I'm not saying how, but I got a spiritual message through things I was writing and certain things that God was going to give me a smile, right? And my imagination was, I believed it, I was convinced and totally persuaded that God had promised me that he was going to give me a smile. Now, I had a dream one night at that time, and I was given these numbers in a dream, and I noted them. And I thought, that's it. These are lottery numbers. I'm going to win some money. This is the smile. This is the great smile that God was going to give me, that he promised me. So I spent all day in the bookies. Every few minutes I had this numbers game. And I did it, and I did it. And I must have went in there with about 70 or 80 pounds. And after a few hours, I was getting a bit weary, but I didn't give up. I knew that I was going to get this smile from God. I knew I was going to win with those numbers. I was down to my last fiver, and I looked at the numbers on the board, and I ran up quick to the counter and did these numbers. And that was my last fiver. And it won. They come in. It was like I was in an astonishing, amazing state. I was shaking. The woman behind the counter, she saw me doing this, and she was looking at me so pathetically, like nodding her head sort of all day I was there. And when I won out, she was gobsmacked. She was like, But what made it worse is I did have a couple of quid left in my pocket, and after I put that bet on, I run back to do the same numbers again, because I've become more convinced that this was it. But she said it was too late. It wasn't, but I didn't do it. But I would have won much more. But anyway, that's besides the point. I won a few thousand, and it was like, smile. Yeah, I was like, wow. I was more amazed at the fact that I got these numbers in a dream, and I did them, and they come up. Anyway, I went off with this money, and I was giving it away to the family, and I was getting the kids gifts with it and presents. And by the end of the week, I found myself I was skint with it. It all gone. All these thousands had gone. I'd spent a lot. So I went back in the bookies, and I had just a few pound left, about fiver left, and I looked at the board of the next race that was on, and it was some dogs, and I was starting to get a bit glum at how quickly all this money had gone. And I remember looking at the names, the 6 dogs, and I looked at the name and I thought, oh, spiritual name, that I'll choose that one. And I went to put £1 on, and I felt God's unction on me. Go on, put the lot on. Put the lot on that one. So I did. And I went to the counter, put it on. And it didn't come first. And I was like, I knew that I got that unction to put it on, put all the money on. It didn't come second. It didn't come third. It didn't come fourth. It didn't come fifth. It come last. And last, it come toddling in at the end. And it was like, I was puzzled. God, what's happened here? What's happened? Anyway, I went out there, I was really glum, very miserable, far from the smile that I was expecting from God. And then as I went across the road, I was walking down a side street, I just kicked a piece of paper that was on the floor. And I wondered about it because it was like one of those little yellow notepad papers, you know, a little bit of stick on the back. So I just picked it up, and it was a bit of scribble from an accountant's numbers and that on there. I turned it over and I looked up in the light, you know, the watermark on it, and it was a big happy smile, you know, like one of those smiles on a kettle. Wear a smile. That to me was like, my God, that was the Red Sea opening. That was like God said, see, I promised you a smile. So all your money's gone, all that what you want. See what see what I'm able to do. See what I am. I can make you up, I can make you down. I could lift you up, I can bring you down. I could break you, I can heal you. All these things that God does. And He could have done an almighty sign of the Red Sea and anything, great miracle or something like that. But that, to me, it was a personal thing. Now, I've shared it with individuals and they've laughed at the funny side of it. Yes, it is a funny side. But it's also, it's God saying, look, I'm your provider. Whatever you need, if you're doing what I've chosen you to do, if you're doing my will, I'm with you. You're with me. I'm on your side. And there's no counsel against that. There's nothing that can overcome you when you're like that. The Apostle Paul was like that. No one could kill Paul. No one could kill Jesus unless if they were allowed to, unless it was given to them to do. It's like the God of creation is in this. This is big, very big, but yet He's so mindful of us nobodies, and He just wants us to be of a certain frame of heart and mind, an obedient heart, to know who He is, not for money or wealth or anything like that, but to know Him and to know His might and to know what He's chosen, to know what is acceptable with Him. The Jews learned this generations ago in ancient times, and when the Jews come out of Israel, this was what they had, the mentality of the world, the worst type of slavery mentality, and it was like God wanted them to see something bigger. He wanted them to know Him, to trust Him, to love Him with all their heart. But that's something that this is precious. You've got to put yourselves in the shoes of the Jews that came out of Egypt to understand a lot of this. You know, when Moses disappeared, or when at times they hungered and they wanted more food other than bread, or they wanted water, and they murmured, you know, he's brought us out here in the wilderness to die out here. We could have stayed in Pharaoh's house and still got fed and blah blah blah. But God was showing them it was the birth of a nation, and He was showing them something that they knew not, and it was precious. It was precious. When they were murmuring, the times when they murmured, did the thought come to them that God hears everything, even though they're not in the mount? Moses might have went up there, but they were left there murmuring. Did they consider that the same God that made everything knows what they're saying behind, out there? You know, when they were lusting after food and blah blah. When Moses went up, why did they build that golden calf? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about, actually Moses isn't here and we want him. But what about the pharaohs? They seem to do okay. They ruled over us in Egypt. And what did they worship? They worshipped these calves and blah blah blah. Let us build one of them. Look, just so we'll prosper the same way that the Egyptians did. You see, and these sort of reasons that were going through the minds. These are probably, it's my opinion, and it just thoughts I've been thinking about this. This is what they probably they made Aaron to build that calf out their gold with, and this happens when we get kind of desperate. We kind of try and fix it ourselves instead of putting everything and trusting in God with these things. It happens with the many variations of, like, people that attend big churches and they'd rather be taught and led by individuals called pastors and teachers and leaders and some such, because they don't trust that God is mindful of them, or they might not trust that they haven't got the courage or boldness enough to believe that they're actually that God knows about them, that God made them, that they haven't actually got that. They haven't got faith. They haven't. It is a gift. It is a gift to have faith. Faith is a gift from God. Not everyone has it, but yet all the promises in Scripture is for everyone, every man on earth, woman on earth. Now, it didn't used to be that way, but there is an acceptable way that God's pleased with. Everyone's got God's will for their life. There's a suit made to measure for every person, every human being on earth. There's a suit made to measure that God's made for you. We don't have to put on a suit off the peg from other people or from tradition. Something worked before, so let's assume it'll work now. Let us walk this way, the same way our fathers did when they did well in such and such. No, there's a time and season for everything. Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes. There's a time and season for every event under the sun. There's one time to prosper, there's another time to lack. But nevertheless, God has made all days. So, like Job said to his wife, when his wife said, "Curse God and die," or something like that, Job said, shall we not appreciate that the Lord has made every day, whether in wealth or in poverty? It says, why should we change our ways and what we say because of the events in the flesh, what we find ourselves in? It's easier said than done, I know, but God doesn't put a heavy burden or a heavy test on us that we can't complete, we can't fulfill. He doesn't put us through a trial or some kind of suffering for something that we're not made to handle. The people of God have it in their heart to want to please God. They have it in their heart to get His favour. But yet we all have different ways about that, the way, whatever sundry way God has put in us. But there is a one set way, the law and the prophets, and the knowledge we have, the recordings of the New Testament, of which is still not being fulfilled. We haven't seen the people of God moving in that way that God desires. When Moses was pleading to the Lord because the people were stiff-necked and they'd done something wrong, and Moses fell on his face pleading to God, begging to God, what was he doing? Was he interceding for the people? No. People, I've heard them preach that he did. I've heard people preach, oh yes, when Moses fell down and pleaded that God don't destroy the people. No. He was pleading for God's holy name. Because God's holy name, Moses was pleading that for the name's sake of God, that in front of the eyes of the heathen, let it not be known that you brought out this people and you couldn't fulfill what you wanted to do, your purpose. He was pleading for the name of God, the holy name. The holy name of God. And right now we look around today, people speak that name flippantly. They don't, there's not the reverence. It's like it's been polluted, but yet it cannot be according to the law. No one, the name of the Lord will not be taken in vain. The Lord will not hold them guiltless that takes his name in vain. What is taking his name in vain? Because that is there's no forgiveness for that. It said the Lord will not hold him guiltless. What does that mean? Does that mean he won't be forgiven, or she won't be forgiven? Does that mean forever? Or does that mean there's no free ticket here, there's no get out of jail free card here, so you'll have to pay for that, or balance that one up yourself? Yeah? Pay the price for what you've, for that, for my name's sake. You know? But what if we see, I'm talking on for the Jews here. The Jews find the name of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, an offence, and also his servants. They call it a lie. They call it pure vanity and all these things. It's despised. It's hated. Despised the whole nation. Not all. There's some Messianic Jews. But where did he get that from? There's nothing written about Jesus. There's nothing in the letters of the apostles, especially Paul, that's wrong, that's of iniquity. There's many of the new versions of scriptures that do totally have the wrong meanings of what is originally written down. But why should they hate the holy name of the God of Israel and his servants? Why? Who? How? Where did it happen? What happened? Why did they crucify Jesus? Why? Why did the people say? Who led them to do this? It was a misinterpretation of the law. Why did they count Jesus as a transgressor to crucify him? What charge did they bring against him? I know there's in the law, like I mentioned in the other tape, the false prophet. Yeah, how do you know a false prophet? They call them a false prophet. How did they accuse him? For doing miracles? Signs? Healings? No. The scriptures and the prophets, I am the Lord that healeth thee. He healed the blind man. The devil can't heal the blind. When has it been heard of? The devil heals the blind. There's lots of stuff that the people were confused about that caused them, and most of it was with the leaders at the time that led the people, the scribes, and that was through a misinterpretation of the law. It surely had to be. And there's other things that have come off it, like Christendom. As soon as they went off, as soon as Jesus came and taught, he's done his short ministry, and the apostles did their bit, and the apostle Paul last of all, even in his letters, all these things that preach and teach of not contradiction to the law, but of a new covenant. It doesn't abolish the law, but a new covenant. When did it start? It didn't finish. It hasn't finished yet. When did it start? When does it start to apply? Does it apply when Jesus was raised from the dead and ascended? There's lots of controversy against that, but it didn't happen. Okay. If he's crucified on the cross, he said, forgive them, they know not what they do. So it's not Jesus that condemns his countrymen, and God certainly won't if his servant or his son cries out, forgive them, they know not what they do. So it's not something that Jesus, the murder of Jesus, curse coming on them. So what's happened? What happened? It was a servant of him. his servant. It was the death and of his servants, the martyrs, the blood spill of his martyrs. It wasn't him, it was his servants. Even though his servants suffered much for their own people, their own countrymen, and left a beautiful legacy and inheritance that you've yet to discover, that's been left for a remnant of God's people. Why does Paul write, don't you know when you do the bread and wine, that you show forth the Lord's death until he comes? All this is mystery. Why does Christendom celebrate him rising from the dead then? If Paul said we show forth his death till he come. Do you know what I'm saying? Do we show forth his life in heaven, or do we show forth his death till he come? And what marks the time of him coming? What marks the time of showing forth his death till he come? When he was on the cross, he said, it is finished, it is done. That comes from a word in Ezekiel, it is done. 39 verse 8, behold, it is come, and it is done. This is the day whereof I have spoken. But yet he wrote that so many hundreds of years before he was crucified on the cross. It's finished, it is done. But yet for the future at that time, now it's right in the verse after that it reads, the Lord shall make known his holy name in the nation. I'll read it. Ezekiel 38. This scripture 38 and 39, sorry, it's 39, is so misinterpreted and misused to create fear and false preaching. It's unbelievable. But Ezekiel 39, so will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name any more. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. So the Holy One in Israel, that means he's returned, show forth his death till he come, right? And the next verse, verse 8, behold, it is come, and it is done. So his offering on the cross, it was almost like it was kept until a time. Behold, it is come, and it is done. Don't forget, he said it is done. There it is finished on the cross. Show forth his death till he come. The Holy One in Israel, he's come. Did not the Lord appear to Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri? Yeah? And that name, the rabbi wrote down, 108-year-old Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, 200,000 at his funeral when he died in 2006. He left a note because the Messiah visited him and revealed to him his name. And that name was Yeshua, or Jehoshua. Jehoshua, Jesus Christ, right? He wrote it down to be read out a year after his death. And all the Jews, Judaism, the Orthodox Jews in Israel, the whole nation was looking forward to this day. Great excitement, great excitement. We're going to know the name of our Messiah. And when it was Jesus Christ read out, many of them turned away and, no. Pride. Did they not consider the things and events that have happened from that time? And they wouldn't know much, and they wouldn't know how it fits and how it works, and they wouldn't have the explanation. Instead of that, they'd still look to the Torah of old, just like the descendants, the fathers in the wilderness. They were looking back. They weren't moving with God. They weren't following spiritually the cloud or the column of fire. They weren't following, because somewhere along the line it's missed. There's another scripture that says, because your fathers forsook me. And why are all these things against us? Because your fathers forsook me. And you do worse. You walk in the way of your fathers and your imaginations. So it's like this has been going on so long, this holding on to the Torah. Even by doing so, they've been preserved. Yes, a remnant of them, but also now is the time they've got to be refreshed. This time is for the time. This is the times of refreshing that comes from the presence of the Lord. You see, this is what they've been waiting for, but they don't know they've been waiting for. They don't know the time and season we're in because they reject Paul that gives the explanation of all these things, and Jesus in his words. Even Rabbi Kaduri said about Yeshua, he said, he will lift up the people and he will show forth his words, and his law is valid. So the key for salvation, the key for prosperity, the key for all success and all pleasing God is in his words and in his law. It's not just the law, it's not just his words, it's all combined. It's all combined in agreement. Paul writes of the law as a schoolmaster to bring us to the place of the new covenant. He doesn't diminish it. He says, so what do we do? He said, Paul says in his letter, so what do we do? Do we discard the law? He said, no, not at all. We establish the law. So why is it people knock Paul down, saying that he come and brought some other doctrine? No. To prove that Paul was the prophet that God promised to raise up from the brethren, to prove his validity is in his letters. He subscribed by his hand letters to a few individuals. He didn't write another Torah. He wrote to a few individuals, and you've got to take note the people that he was writing to. Some he was writing to some Gentiles, some others he was writing to Jews amongst Gentiles. But nevertheless, his instructions and explanations, it all fitted in with compliance to the law. There was no iniquity. There was an outward appearance of vileness with Paul, or unclean, or this man is nothing, we shouldn't listen to him, look at him. No, big mistake. This is not the way of God. Isaiah 53 explained in detail his description, the way he appeared, the way Paul the servant appeared, not as the others, because he was last of all. His revelation literally, his message come by revelation. It came by the Spirit of God, from above. It was like the wind that you didn't know where it come from, you didn't know where it went. Like Jesus explained to Nicodemus, being born again of the Spirit, you don't know, like the wind, you don't know where it comes from, you don't know where it goes. Paul's message, right the way through, especially Romans, gives the description in plain of the vision. No one else has the picture, the vision plan, God's plan for his people. He wrote all these letters with all his teachings in it to prove. It's like the rod of Aaron, right? When they laid down the rods of the chiefs of the tribes, the one that was chosen and anointed of God budded, and that was the rod of Aaron, chosen priesthood, right? And it was kept for a sign. And this is the sign. Paul's letters and his gospel has been written in plain. As well as the first four gospels, there's controversy and different things, but that's a good idea. Well, there was 3 or 4 to confirming the same things in the gospels. But nevertheless, the letters and the gospel of Paul is the gospel of salvation in Christ. And only now, I will make a few videos from now on describing that Paul's words that he wrote have come to pass and are valid. And this is how you know a prophet of the Lord. That which he saith, or in this case wrote, shall come to pass. And many of it has come to pass. The first thing that started to come to pass of the words he said, that I know of, I might have missed some, but what I know of is when Pope John Paul called all the nations' spiritual leaders of every religion and belief, called them together to one place to pray to their God for peace on earth. Now, this fulfills words of Jesus and also words of Paul. I'll prove this in the following videos. Bit by bit, I'll try a bit more strategic and focused on these points. But this is especially for the Jews that hold fast to Judaism. They hold fast to the Torah law. Yes, it is of God, absolutely, right? But when it's embraced partially, like the way it's done, God will call you all as liars if you just rely on that. Moses said that it will be counted as righteousness if you do all this, but not all of this is done. Not all of the Torah is done, is it? Come on. Therefore, there's something else that you need. There's something else to be justified. There's something else. The prophet that God promised to raise up has the keys. He has the solution to this. His teachings. It's not his teachings on his own. It's the teachings that he received from the one that sits in the heavens. His teachings have proved now to bud. They're budded now, and I'll show that. I'm going to leave it there because I'm touching on the limit of my time. So that's where we'll start the next video. Okay, thanks.